first agenda item is the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda is board chair statement, and I would like to take a moment of silence for the loss of a student that we've had in our school district, please. Thank you all. Our next agenda item is correspondence, visitors, and public comments. Do we have anybody online?
I don't see anyone online. That's not one of our administrators.
I just want to commend MVU band for the amazing job they did at least Highgate's parade for Memorial Day. They didn't get a chance to go to the other towns, but I know they were there also. So thank you, Aaron and the band, for being part of it again. You know, talking to Aaron, it's been at least 16 years in a row that they've been part, so great tradition.
Nice. It was very nice. Thank you. Any other? Seeing no other ones, we'll go on to item number 5, which is the agenda review.
I have a packed agenda, but I don't see anything for deletion or addition.
Thank you. Next item is the approval for the minutes on May 23rd. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Oh, well.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Megan. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the approval of the minutes for May 23rd, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you.
The other thing is, do we want to flip the video presentation with?
Actually, yes. I think that would be good to look at the video presentation and the students first, please. Chris?
Awesome. So we have some of our students and a couple of our teachers here tonight that would like to talk to you about a really exciting project that they've done. So I'll have maybe Mrs. Belrose and Mrs. Mitchell do a little introduction, and then the students can chime in.
Sure.
Awesome.
All right, hey, so I'm Kirsten Belrose. I teach 6th grade in Swanton School, have for a long time. This is Jen Mitchell. You may be familiar with her. She's our tech integration specialist. I would like to introduce to you Sam Messier. We've got Hayden Parody here. We have Miracle Book Louisa. We have Matthew Joachim here, and they're 6th graders. I teach 2 groups of kids, and as part of I teach ELA in humanities. And so one of the things I did a while ago, pre-COVID, is we had a What's News at Swanton Central School program, and wanted to kind of get back to that. It's kind of a nice way for kids to use some of those interpersonal skills, those transferable skills, their literacy skills, speaking and all that kind of stuff. And so I talked with Jen and said, let's see if how we can figure this out. technology has changed a little bit since then. We no longer do a big camera. So as part of our ELA program, I had 8 kids actually, also from Christine DePay's class. I work with them. And so we sat down during our ELA time and lunch times and anytime we could find, and then brainstormed ideas for stories. We watched CNN Student News, so we kind of looked at that. They came up with ideas, questions. They had to do some research, just like reporters get background knowledge, all that sort of thing. And then that's where Jen Mitchell was really important for me, because there's no way I could do that and teach them the tech that needed to happen for them to do that. So they put together a news program for you. It took us a lot longer than we had planned. It was our first year doing this, and they were just outstanding. We'd like to show it to you, and then maybe you'd like to ask them some questions, or they can talk with you. Does that sound about right, Mr. Dodge?
Sounds right.
Okay. So this was all out of it done in front of this green screen.
Good morning, Swanton. It looks like Miracle's late again.
Good morning, Swanton. Sorry I was late. I had important business to take care of. Now let's get the show started.
On today's show, we're going to share what happened during the winter at Swanton School.
We had a new service dog coming to our school, an exclusive interview with our teacher, Miss Rivers.
An interview with Central School PE teacher, Mr. Nielsen.
Finally, we will share the epic win for the Swanton Royals.
There is a new face greeting people at the door 4 times a week. Her name is Poppy the therapy dog. Poppy comes in and greets students and staff.
When her owner, Mrs. Simmons, found her online, she thought she would be a great therapy dog. It took about 1.5 years to train her.
Poppy really loves to get her belly scratched and loves eating.
I would too if I was her.
Does she like being at school?
I think so. Yep, when it's time to go in the morning and I say, okay, Poppy, let's go, she hops up with me and she follows me. I think she likes spending time with me. She likes seeing all the kids. I notice when they're petting her, like her tail is wagging and stuff, and she really likes this couch.
I see that.
Yeah.
In our story, we interviewed Miss Rivers on her experience as a teacher. As a teacher, she enjoys not only making projects, but looking at your hard work as well. Really good. Do you have like a favorite project of yours that you have done or a student has done?
I think one of my favorite projects that we've done in the art room, for one, was our book project that we did earlier this year. I loved seeing all the individuality that came out in everybody's books. Another one of my favorites is our lava lamp project that we just did. Actually, some of us are still working on it in the art room, and I have examples of it too. I could always pull one down. But that was one of my favorite art projects that we've done.
Even art teachers have their own favorite projects. Do you have like a favorite project that you did as like a student?
I would say yes. I remember doing this project. I was in Mrs. Abraham's art class actually in high school, and we made these pen and ink projects. We made pen and ink projects, and I had made this drawing of a pen and ink bear wearing a little cozy beanie, and I just really got into the detail of each hair in the bear's face and used value to show I used value in the face to show the lights and the darks, and it came out really great. And it was one of the first pieces that I created that made me feel like I had an artistic ability and a power to use. So yeah, that was probably one of my favorites for sure.
And now, that's random.
When Ben and Jerry's first started their business, they sold ice cream, crepes, pottery, and soup. chicken noodle fudge chunk, anyone?
Next, we interviewed Mr. Nielsen and talked about his cup stacking unit. During this unit, we learned about dexterity along with hand-eye coordination.
We learned how to create different stacks. Some kids have blown up the records for the 333, 363, and the 110-1 stacks.
Whoa.
Here's a clip of Sam Marley creating the 363 stack. Okay.
I've been cup stacking for about a year. We had an activity that we did in college where we had to learn a different kind of physical activity that we had never seen before, that we'd never done before. And I decided I wanted to learn a little bit more about cup stacking. And I love it. So cup stacking, or speed stacking as a lot of people call it, is something where we train our hands. We train our fingers to be able to get super fast with
I'm gonna pause it.
It is connected to a speaker, so the editing is done mostly by the kids. They learn how to do some of it, so obviously next year we'll look more at the volume piece.
So we're confident in what we can do with our hands.
Steady.
We use our hands for so many different things. And we talked a lot about dexterity and hand-eye coordination in the unit. So you're being able to see an object, whether it's moving or it's sitting still in front of you, and you can move. So I've taken records from pretty much every class of every grade in our school. And for this stack, I'll talk about this stack in particular, the 363. We've had some people who have done the 363, they've stacked it up, and they went back to the beginning to down stack it, and they've done that in less than 4 seconds, which is really mind-blowing how fast that is. But that just shows how important it is to be fast. So the goals for the unit were to build on those two words that I told you about, hand-eye coordination and dexterity, because we use our hands so much in everyday lives with things outside of PE. Whether you're picking up a pencil and you're writing with a pencil, or you need to have your fingers ready to type a paper. You need to have dexterity and hand-eye coordination.
On to the interview with Mr. Nielsen about cross-country skiing.
I remember when we did that in PE class. There wasn't a lot of snow, but we made the best of it.
It's definitely very different from downhill skiing for sure.
There is one thing that is the same. We still fell a lot.
So cross-country skiing is different from downhill skiing. Downhill skiing, you go to a ski mountain and the slopes are a little bit more intense, a little bit more straight down, and you go really fast when you turn across the snow. But with cross-country skiing, this is something that's done on more flat ground and something people do over long distances. People go for miles for cross-country skiing. So this is something that's done more on flat ground and uses a different kind of skis as well. So I thought about cross-country skiing because we don't have a lot of PE activities here at school that we can do outside in the winter. We like to stay a lot in here in the gym when it's cold, and I wanted to find a way for us to get outside and be active when it's cold outside, because we know living in Vermont, it's very cold and we get a lot of snow, and there's lots of different ways we can get outside in the snow, but not a lot of people think about them. So this is new for a lot of you here, and we were able to get outside and really enjoy ourselves, find a new way to get active outside. We were able to get every single class in the central building out on the skis. And for me, this is new for me too, because I'm a snowboarder. So skis are something that I don't have a lot of experience with. So we were all kind of able to learn something new together. And it seems like people had a really fun time. It's easy to fall on cross-country skis, but people were really willing to stand up and try to get better. And they had fun with each other. We laughed and we smiled and we enjoyed the fresh air. So people have really liked it.
I love that. This brings me up. So, has there been any fails or accidents?
So there haven't been any, I wouldn't say any accidents, but I would say there's been lots of falling, as I said, but that's what happens when you're doing something new, something outside, something with big things on your feet that you don't normally have on your feet when you're trying to move. So there's been lots of mistakes, we've fallen, but when we make mistakes, they help us learn better and they help us challenge ourselves. And they help us to learn what we can do to be better movers. So when people make mistakes, I've encouraged people to just pop right back up, and we pop up and we try again and we try something new. And we've done a really, really great job with that as a school.
Are you planning on doing this more often in the future?
So I plan on doing a winter outside unit every year, and I would really like to get this equipment back next year for sure. So we can do snowshoeing, we can do cross-country skiing, the 5th grade does downhill skiing too, so we can get outside in the winter when not a lot of people want to go outside and have fun.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you.
The tradition of the Teachers versus Royals basketball game carried on this year.
There was one big difference in this year's game, though. For the first time ever, the teachers suffered a devastating loss.
The teachers were hard on the court,
But their knees got them in the end.
Yeah.
What you thought about it. I'm putting them on the spot. This was pretty quick, but I wanted you to be able to actually see some faces. So what did you guys think of doing that project?
I definitely enjoyed it. I felt that it took, like you said earlier, more time than we expected, but it was very fun to produce that one short episode. But it was a lot of work, and it was overall just a good project.
I think this project, not only was it like fun, but it also improved our cooperation skills and improved us as like to bring more of us in these kind of projects, and I feel like it really helped us be more creative.
I really liked this project. It was really fun, and it was just fun to have a challenge and try something.
I don't really have anything that hasn't been said, but I did enjoy the process of editing the video.
What I want to recognize these kids for is that while they're working on this, I'm teaching, she had classes to teach, and so the great thing about it was that they were able to go and conduct these interviews without us necessarily. They learned how to do the editing, but then so there was a lot of trust there, and we knew they'd be respectful, they had to be responsible, and they were working with teachers and people all over the school. I was still in the classroom with other kids, and so there was work that they were responsible for and they took care of, and it gave them that little extra something too that they needed as students. But they did a really nice job. They could be out there, and I think those opportunities are important for kids. But I really want to thank Jen as well. Having that position for me as a teacher, it's helpful. It would have been very overwhelming to try to do it alone. So thanks. That's it. All right, you guys can go home.
Thank you.
So Mrs. Belrose,
Yes.
how many more wonderful educational experiences are you going to bring to the Swanton students? I mean, 20 years, 30 years, you keep coming up.
35, and I figure I got another 15 in me there, mister.
I will take that.
It's being recorded.
I can't stop it.
Please don't. Most of you don't know, but she did the most amazing job with students who went to the legislature and did things that no other students had ever done, even high school kids. It was
Mr.
because of the things
Carpenter.
she did.
Yeah, that was
Well,
fun too.
snowboarding is now a Vermont state sport.
Winter sports, yeah, snowboarding. That was fun too, wasn't it?
It was very much fun.
But, thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much. Good job.
I can't believe you put that basketball game in there.
Thank you so much.
Devastating.
I love the tutus.
Actually, a little bit was. Really hot. It was really hot and there's a lot of COVID and we're all running around. It was so much fun.
You've got Mason, who's taller than like half the adults also.
I know, he really.
He's a great basketball player.
It was just amazing. You play with them and then you remember they were like 5 when they were in kindergarten and all of a sudden they're like towering over you. You're playing and you're like, wait a minute. Aren't you a little boy? What happened? Do you like peas? Do you like peas? They did such a nice job. Fun project.
All right, and moving right along, we'll do the administrative reports. Joyce with Franklin first.
Any questions for Joyce?
Is there any questions on Joyce's report and the principal's report? Go ahead, Tom.
I have about 3 or 4, so I don't dominate the meeting. Other people have them. I don't make anything. I guess the first thing is a statement. It seemed like this year our schools did the best job in many years on Memorial Day type activities. If you look through the reports and hearing and seeing things. At one time, the school, and Mrs. Bogles, remember, we'll say 20 plus years ago, there was a lot going on in the school on Memorial Day. And then it all seemed to go away. And there were years where you'd stop and see a student play doing Memorial Day and you kind of looked at you like, what's that day? So it's good to see it back in every school. Every school, that's great. I had a question for Joyce, if she's there. Joyce, foster grandparents. I was pleased to see that you kept it alive. At one time, this was a wonderful thing in the county, and then I think we kind of lost Mary and some of the people, but how many do you have coming back next year, or do you know?
Yeah, so the change with Mary was huge, and then COVID, and they've actually lost a lot of people from the program. We were really fortunate to have 3 for a long time. Dora Santini retired this past year, and Joanne Stetson, who'd been with us 12 and a half years and 15 years. So we miss them terribly. So we have 1 foster grandparent left, David Pratt, and he's been with us for 4 years. And at the dinner, I did talk about, we'd love to have more again. So it's a wonderful program, and it really adds a lot to a school. And we're thankful for all the years we had Joanne and Doris, and we hope David will stay with us for a long time.
So how do we get more? Is it allocated by school or region, or just anybody can ask?
Anybody can ask for one, and then it just has to be, the supervisor there at foster grandparent, does the match with schools and the foster grandparents. And right now she's kind of doing double duty because they've lost people working for the foster grandparent program also, and haven't been able to replace them. So they're pretty short-handed. And I actually sometimes when I talk to people, I mention it. Just today I was talking to somebody and I said, oh, there's this foster grandparent program, and tried to encourage them to make that contact with Tree and see about getting to be a part of the program.
Thank you. I enjoyed reading that report. And the last thing is, Chris, I saw you Memorial Day, but Girls on the Run. Are you the only school in this Girls on the Run? Do the other elementary schools have that program? That's a fantastic program too. My question is, how are they funded? Because I see the girls are young ladies, but I think there's Girls on the Run going to Manchester. That's an expense. How will they get there? Do they children have to raise money? Or?
Yeah, so they go with parents. The entire program is grant funded, and we were, sorry?
EPSDT.
With EPSDT grant funding, and we were lucky this year. We actually nearly doubled the number of participants that we had this year compared to last year.
So Laura, is that funding something that's fragile?
It's a part of Medicaid, so not really.
Okay, so it's pretty stable.
Yeah. It's a small funding source, EPSDT.
I've seen this program in other schools where I've consulted, and it's an amazing program. Thank you. I think that's it. Thank you.
They did have their run on Saturday, and WCAX did a story on that. At the
It was on Saturdays?
At the Essex Fairground. There's a couple, they're like regionally based, so the ones that Swanton participated in was at the Essex Fairgrounds Saturday.
Great.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments for the principals online?
For any other principals or just Joyce?
Just do any of them.
I wanted to ask, so I read, Scott is handing out the certificates, the graduation certificates for Highgate.
The last time I had an email about it, yes. Excuse me, that's where we were at.
Okay, he's doing it just by himself?
Usually I'm up there and I kind of support with that. Usually I kind of have I announce the names and then he hands the actual certificate to the kids.
I just want to say that was like a really nice way to kind of say thank you to him. So I thought that was pretty good. So, and that was it. And then the Memorial Day, I thought that was good for all the schools that they were doing that.
Yeah, and actually Ty's in the room, right? Thank you, Ty, again. I did put you in my report. Thanks for supporting the 4th grade for Memorial Day.
I just have to say, I thought they were all great and informative reports, and thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Unfortunately, I personally will only be able to attend the high school one because I'll be traveling for work next week, which I really wanted to try to get to everyone, but I'm not able to, so my apologies on that. Thank you for the invite.
We're on the
Same week.
same, and usually the same night. So I rotate.
For the 6th grade?
So, for the 6th grade graduation, yes. June 13th, no, so Highgate's is June 13th, Swanton's is June 15th, MVU's 8th grade is June 16th, and Franklin is also on June 13th.
It's busy.
Yep. Yes, Tom?
I'd just like to have the minutes show appreciation to Dan for giving us an update on the seniors. It was, it wasn't a lot of information, but it made me feel like we're kind of in the know of what our seniors are doing, and we brought that up many times. So if the taking minutes just indicate that I think all of us probably thought that was really nice to have that kind of information coming in.
All right. Seeing no other questions or comments, I'd like to thank the principals online and wish you to have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
So next on the agenda, excuse me, is policies for adoption, which will need action. Julie?
So again, the school-sponsored student activities and athletics would be one we'd be looking to adopt. That's a revised policy, and we want to make it clear in the motion that we are withdrawing the old policy. And I think it's okay in a single motion because it's not a completely separate policy. So I think we would be adopting this as the new revised C-24. I think that's the way it is. Sometimes we have to make separate motions to withdraw one policy and then another to adopt.
So you're looking for a motion to
approve the revision of this C-24.
I can make that motion.
Megan, motion, thank you. Would anybody like to second the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Devin. Any discussion?
Julie, do you have an update on the administrative procedure that the policy calls for?
Yes, we have them drafted, speaking about how the different how we will ensure that there's coordination between schools and what the procedures are that we already have in place for 8th graders, and the procedure, it's basically agreement between the athletic directors and the principals involved, but we make sure that, for instance, if 6th graders were going to play field hockey, that there's that communication and we follow that process. Justina has agreed to help coordinate with some meetings to make sure that we have the similar number of games and that the registration processes are similar and more equitable. See, I said it on camera, so. Got it.
Anybody else? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Jen, if it's okay, can I just ask one question about the admin report?
Okay.
Looking through it, there was one thing about the school choice and like how it was used, like that chart. And it did break down, I guess, like the reasons.
Right.
And I see in there like the three biggest slices were athletics, which I understand, but then the tech center and then cultural and diversity. And I was just kind of hoping to like maybe elaborate on that a little bit, like.
Sure. So, the tech center is our tech center. Our kids can go there, and but some students gave that as an example of why they wanted to go to choose BFA, because they would be a little bit closer, because obviously there's a bus ride involved, and there are sometimes scheduling conflicts and things like that. People don't need to give a reason under statute, but they often would reference things. So I tried to say culture and diversity because a couple of people mentioned maybe issues they were having within a school, or they were looking for one person explicitly said they were looking for a diverse population in their school selection. And it was 8 kids. Not all of them are making that choice, but people often said athletics and academics, or people often gave multiple reasons. So I tried to represent that. We've had it's a smaller year for school choice. It varies depending on
Is the trend kind of going down? Because I saw it was higher, and then it's sort of like it's.
I think it's hard to say it's a trend. I mean, a lot of it has to do with where did my family go to school, and do I have siblings that are going to a different school? And again, you're not supposed to pick a school because they're a Division I school and you're not a Division I school, but you do. It depends on a lot of factors. But, yeah, I think it was good. Kelly brought it up last time. I wanted to make sure that I shared what information I do have, and that's something I can look at every year, is get a copy of those and take a look at them.
And then last thing, did I read correctly? Only 2 Bonnie took the grandfathering option?
Yep, all that were my 2 employees, yep.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I'm like, only 2? Okay. All right.
That's surprising you got one, right? Actually, it did surprise me. Yeah. I pegged, that like 40 were eligible. I thought about 6 to 7 would. So some of the ones that didn't, really surprised me. So that's great.
Bonnie did a wonderful job explaining it.
We had a little road show that we did, so it's good.
To follow up on the school choice, is there a criteria? I know you said there's a limit and stuff, but if there's room and you apply, you automatically can switch schools, or how does that work?
So there's 2 processes. there's the receiving school and there's the accepting. So as a school, MVU, we don't need to make a motion every year because we're not changing it. We use the minimum as a percentage of student, or 10 per year to 40, we never hit that. They can leave our school. If a student leaves here to go to Enosburg or, South Burlington, we still count them as a student. The South Burlington or Enosburg counts them as a school choice Act 127 student, and the average daily membership reflects that. So we don't lose equalized pupils in that way. Other schools then have a number of kids they can receive, and that is worked out based on what your class sizes are and how many offerings you have. And sometimes schools hit that cap, and when they do, they have to have a lottery. And it has to be blind.
Just a comment coming back to what Ralph asked and Peter. When the legislation for school choice was being discussed, one of the driving forces was students going to tech centers. It's not too bad here for MVU to skip to St. Albans. Right. But there are places where students ride the bus for 25, 30 miles to their high school, then get on another bus and go another 15 miles flying. And so the testimony that we heard said, wouldn't it be nice if you want to go to a tech center, career center, that you could go to the high school, which is next to it. A lot of people think the high school, I hear many people saying, I'm going to tech center at BFA. There is no tech center at BFA. It just happens to be next door, and it's got a different governance, and it has a board. I guess now it's governed by the same board.
It is governed by the Maple Run School Board.
But anyway,
yep.
But it was done to recognize that we were discouraging students to go to tech center because they were logging so many miles. And some of them, the hours they lost riding a bus meant they couldn't take a science credit or an art or something. So every time I hear somebody's going to tech center, even though it's our budget, maybe, I just think that it's great if that's what they want.
Well, I know I don't want to derail, but I do want to make an announcement about that, if that's okay. I was with both tech center directors today. We had a regional advisory board meeting for our county, and we got approval from the Agency of Ed, Ruth Durkee, to have at MVU, we're going to have the Northwest Career and Technical Center's building trades class here at MVU in our building trades empty classroom, so that cohort of kids, it will also be going to the main campus as well, so that there's an integration of all the students, but there will be projects that will be done there as well. They had a lot of kids in that program, and Ross and Roy wanted to explore if we could have a site here and really make it easier for some of our kids and be a little more transparent about tech. And we're excited to make that happen.
Great.
Search and seizure.
Well, I just want to make sure as if there was any other questions or comments before we go to search and seizure. Okay.
So the search and seizure policy, again, as I explained last time, is a boilerplate from the Vermont School Board Association model policy that is just to be really clear about what the law says about the ability for school personnel to search students. And we would look for a motion to adopt that policy.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Megan.
Second.
Thank you, Devin. Any discussion?
Is this a policy we currently have? It's just...
No, it's one of the recommended policies that was on the list, and then it reflects the law, so it doesn't change anything for students or families, but I think it's a clear notice, something that can go in the handbook, etc.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Let's see.
And then on to truancy update. Are you gonna put it in?
I'm giving it a shot.
All right.
So, we talk about attendance a great deal and truancy, and I wanted to share a little bit about our district MTSS attendance team that meets regularly, and I wanted to share some of the data that we have been looking at and examining, and trends that we're speaking of. And Kosha's hanging on in case I say anything. I appreciate the fact that Kosha helped coordinate it. Justine is also on that team. So I want to share the attendance rates for each school over the past 2 years. The data on students experiencing truancy or high levels of absence. An overview of the district work that we're doing and some plans for next year. So this table, we can do this in our new program EduClimber, but there are some data challenges still that we're trying to work out, so I recreated it for you. And here are our overall attendance rates for each school, where the blue is last school year and the red is this school year. Then I have them all written down in my notes, and now I can't see them because I'm doing a full presentation. You have one? Do they have my little notes on the bottom?
Oh.
Nope. It's all right. So you can see we were at in the 80s, high 80s for our overall rate of attendance for each school, and we made significant jumps in each school. Up to over 3 points of attendance increase from one year to the next. Again, it's not dramatic, but every kid that is here every day, this is a daily attendance rate, not were you in second period phys ed versus 15th period. So Franklin went from 91.8 to 90, almost 93%. Highgate went from 89.8 to almost 93%. Swanton went from 89% to 93%. The middle school went from, they were really stable, 91% to a higher 91%. So, and then the high school went from 88.4% up to 91.5% of attendance rate. So big overall improvements in every school.
Seems pretty flat across all the schools as well.
We have, 90% attendance is good, 93% attendance is good, but the kids who don't come are where you really, we're trying to get back from COVID and see if we can just get that pattern of kids attending more. We spent a long time telling people, if you have the sniffles, stay home, and now we want them to come to school. It's a confusing message. And so I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. I want to share with you the grade level trends you can see here. Ignore the orange. The orange has to do with the way Power School tracks attendance from period to period. But you can see that attendance is pretty solid, and then as kids get older and they have their cars and they have jobs, all the things that Dan and others have talked to you about, the pressures, that students will tend not to come to school as often. So it's definitely an issue that the high school contends with more than elementary. Here I'm doing the side-by-side from last year to this year, and the colors just, go from 10 days absent to 20 to 30, etc., all the way up to 100. We didn't have anyone in that range here, but last year we had some kids at the 80 and 90-day mark, and this year you have kids in the 50 area, but Now, this data is through May 31st. So you can see the improvement in the rates of attendance. And the kids who are out a lot. Lots of kids are out 10 days. You go see a family member in Florida that's not on a school holiday and you get sick with something, strep throat, COVID, whatever it is, it's keeping you home for a good 5 days straight, you get into that. It's pretty easy to do. And this data does not separate out excused and unexcused absence. It's just absence. Here we are in Highgate. You can see the dramatic difference there. Here we are in Franklin. I can't tell you why the chart looks different than the other two charts. It wouldn't change for me, but it's the same thing. Instead of two separate, we have them side by side. But you can see pretty dramatic turnaround in students coming to school. Here's MVU Middle School. Again, you can see a significant difference. Even the number of students who are out for 10 days is down significantly. And fewer kids way over here in the 90 and 100 day range. And then here is the high school. You can see the difference from year to year. Again, the chart didn't want to play nicely with me. But you can see even here, you know, last year you had kids at this time of year out 110 days, out of 175 school day.
So those students eventually dropped out of school or do
I'm sorry?
the students who are up around 90, 100, 110 days, do they eventually drop out of school?
Well, it depends on the age of the student, and you can't drop, you know, without consent from a parent, even when you're 16, 17 years old. So anyone who is in this high level, we have a lot of work that gets done with families, that gets done, you know, we do affidavits, and we go through that whole process, and our truancy and engagement specialist, Celine Rando, does great work with school administrators on that.
Julie, this may seem like an obvious question, but when you say excused, unexcused, that's separate from work absences for the high schoolers who are like on work programs? Or does that fall into that?
If a student is leaving campus to go to work that we're arranging, it's part of their work-based learning, that they're not absent. But some students will just not come because they're working. That's different. So I just put a quote in there that chronic absence, missing 10% or more of school days due to absence for any reason, excused or unexcused, even including suspension, which is not data that I'm sharing you here today. And anytime kids are not in school can translate into students having difficulty learning to read by 3rd grade, achieving in middle school, and graduating from high school. And that's something we talk about a lot. We know how important it is. Kosha today emailed me that Rusty has pulled data for us with our new data platform, where I can now see the students with high absenteeism in their STAR 360 reading data or math data and see what the correlation is, because we know that there is correlation. But I didn't have it in time for this meeting.
Do we have any information on attendance pre-COVID? So like, are we back to levels that we were at, or hopefully better than we were before COVID hit, and people are intentionally keeping their kids home if they have the sniffles? And
I'll research that.
Okay.
I think we were always in the 90s. I don't know if we were closer to 95 and now we're at 93, but I think that would be important to look at, because we do, it does feel, particularly at certain times of year, different, you know, flu season, Justina will, you know, tell you. There are times of year where it feels like nobody's here. Right. So I think that it would be good to see what we can look back to, so that our NTSS team can really look at what's perception and what's actual. Because I do remember during COVID, especially when we had hybrid, I remember Dan saying in a meeting, our attendance is awful. I don't think anybody's coming.
Right.
And then we looked at the numbers and we said, oh, it's better than I thought it was. It's still not what we want, but sometimes the numbers wake us up to our perception of things.
I think Swanton Elementary, going back 20 years on board, It's usually right in the low 90s. I don't think they ever got to the mid 90s. I think that was like 90s. I don't know about the high school, we never talked about it much, but I know one time they were below 90 in high school.
Well, and they certainly were last year. They were at 88, which is,
And we've had times that they've had that more than once, so.
that's good to know.
I'm really pleased with what I'm seeing there. Hopefully we can build on it.
There's little things that kind of add, and I don't want to interrupt, but when we think about doctors, like something as simple as like a doctor's appointment, so pre-COVID, even for teachers and probably everyone here, you could just schedule a doctor's appointment outside your working hours, right? Like, oh, I'm at school till 3:30, something after that. Now you just get what you get for appointments. But that affects kids too, because if they have an 11 o'clock doctor's appointment, there's a percentage of kids who just won't come at all that day instead of coming in, leaving for an appointment, because all of that takes transportation and time. So even hardships like the changing landscape of medical appointments affects attendance more than it used to. It used to be an early dismissal at 2:30, and now it can be a whole day. And every kid is unique, but all of those things kind of go in the bucket of what's contributing to some of that.
Dental is a good one. I find it now, they tell you when you can come.
Yeah,
And you
that's
just take
exactly
it.
right. That's exactly right. Those are the kinds of things that we talk about in our data meetings on attendance. Because when we are intervening with a family that's struggling to bring their child to school, or an adolescent that's struggling to come to school, we have conversations with families like, absolutely understand, if you can get them here at 2 o'clock, we'll take that. If you can have them come until the appointment and then pick them up. But there are a lot of barriers for families. Transportation is one of them sometimes. Their own work schedules, sometimes it is easier for families to keep children home. So we do a lot of education, and we'll talk about our plan to increase that. I just wanted to call your attention to this. One of the resources we use is Attendance Works. And there's a difference between truancy, the old-fashioned, what the Department of Children and Families and the court system will look at when it comes, is truancy, unexcused. A child can miss 80 days of school, but if the parent is calling in and saying it's for a doctor's appointment or for this or that, then we are less likely to have an affidavit because it really needs to be coded as unexcused. And our district is pretty tight about how we code things. We're trying to be really clear and say that we're concerned about attendance all the time, and we really try and talk to families about chronic absence versus truancy, because one certainly sounds more punitive than the other, but we also are, we want to make sure that we're being accurate with that. So this team that we have put together, and thank you for Kosha and Celine for really thinking about the need for this. It's district-wide. We review data. We talk about trends. We solidify our practices. So something like, do we call this excused or unexcused? We make sure that we're on the same page as schools around that. We are embedding attendance and review of attendance into our EST process. So if referral is made to the educational support team or the MTSS team, which they're a little bit synonymous when we're talking about a child-centered team, we are looking at attendance. It's not necessarily a separate team that sits around and looks at that. We're looking at the student's performance, their social emotional well-being, and how well they're attending. So we're looking at the whole child. We really talk about tiered responses. What are we doing at the prevention level? What are we doing to intervene early? What are we doing to give the just right level of support? Is it classroom teachers calling home to say, we really missed Megan at school today. I hope she's able to join us tomorrow. Her friends missed her. It's not a negative phone call, it's a connection. That's really important, and the research says that that is an important thing that gets many children at school more often. So that culture of community, I think, is also important, as well as filling out affidavits when you have done all of the work and families aren't able to bring children to school. And again, we really do value our truancy engagement specialist. She's housed at MVU. She works with all of our schools. A lot, as you can see from the previous charts, high school students are some of the more challenging places getting students to school, but She's a big resource for our school. The team members, Kosha started the team. Tammy Hayes from Student Services, Christy Martin from MVU is on the team. Justina, very happily joined the team. Colleen Festina, our board certified behavior analyst, and I sit on that team as well. I got roped in. So things that we're working on next is our last meeting, and Justina, please jump in. We met with JR to talk about a public relations campaign so that we can really be sharing videos about the importance of attendance. So we're going to be doing a whole video series, not starting with, well, your kid's going to drop out of high school if you're bringing them to, first grade. That we will share data and statistics and important information, but we really want to talk about the positives, provide supports, share information. Some of the things were about how to help your child come to school if they're a little anxious about coming to school. What are things that we can do? So can you think of others that you want to?
I can mention something that I'm really kind of toying with for Swanton is really just looking at what we do with kindergarten next year, our incoming kindergartners, because it's hard right now for 5th and 6th graders who have gone through a few years of COVID and struggled with attendance to kind of reverse that. We do all the things, but it's a little bit more difficult. So really wanting to kind of shift a little bit and continue those efforts, but kind of saturate our work with kindergarten to kind of build those connections and relationships right out of preschool or kids that come in from home in the community, and kind of starting that right off out of the gate, so that will build. So just trying to figure out how to do a little extra there to saturate, and that's just kind of been a new thought.
What do you mean exactly?
Just really focusing some of our attention for our kindergartners who are chronically absent and struggling with attendance. So right now we're spreading our resources across all of our grade levels and all of our kids and families in need, which makes sense. But what can we do that's extra at the kindergarten level and kind of support families that struggle right out of the gate when they join school, to kind of break that pattern and see if we can get some better numbers as those kids age up, because reversing it,
at 5th grade.
At 5th grade it's just more challenging. The kids have created their own patterns at home, some of them, that don't want to come in, and a 5-year-old not wanting to come in and struggling at home is a lot more manageable than when they are now 6th grade and don't want to come in and just say they're not. Parents can't just put a 6th grader in the car. So what can we do? Just wanting to kind of saturate some of those resources. Okay.
So yeah, we also are looking at other parent resources that we can push out to families. And we're also exploring, we use Class Dojo here. We have a seesaw system in Highgate. Wondering if, right now MVU uses their Google Classroom, but it doesn't blast out to parents' cell phones in the same way. So we're exploring whether some kind of messaging system like that might be helpful. Because if I'm an English teacher with 80 kids that I see, and I've got 10 kids that maybe I want to reach out to, having something like that may be a little bit easier in terms of homeschool communication. Sometimes that helps. And then again, I talked about our different tiers, from supportive to a reactive intervention. And one of the things we've talked about here in Swanton is transportation. And we do not transport kids in Swanton Village. We don't have a bus route for them. And when we go out, we may want to look at that, because we do have families in the village that have less access to transportation, that have some struggle getting students to school. So we want to look and see if there are any patterns there, and if maybe an extra bus route would somehow help. That's something we could certainly look at. And of course, we provide counseling and supports as well.
Can I just bring up something as more of a parent and less of a board member? Because I have a pre-K and I have a kindergartner. the bus is a challenge because we had our daughter start on the bus and she goes Highgate at the beginning of the year, and it was not a good experience because she's on the same bus as like middle schoolers, right? And that's a pretty overwhelming thing, right? Especially when we're talking about like a 30 or 40-minute bus ride. And I don't think I'm the only parent who deals with that, and I know that that actually affects sometimes some of the days that they go. And I would say that I don't know what you do about that, 'cause obviously there's a cost to like trying to provide that up. But I can say that that affects it, right? And then I know on the other side, my son goes pre-K at Swanton, having the interject of like the outdoor classrooms that he does with, what's his name, Mr.
Valenta.
Like that really helps him be able to get through a day. And I know that having that kind of thing and break it out for like those kindergartens to like not just be in a classroom all day. Again, everything has cost, which I'm more than aware of. But when we're talking about truancy and days absence, like these are factors that I think play a role because we stopped putting her on the bus, which means somebody's taking her every day now, and that might be one of those things. So, and that was actually something that I was actually quite surprised because I didn't know that kindergartners are on the bus with middle schoolers and high schoolers, and it to me is not a good situation. Again, I don't know if there's something to do about it, but that's just my opinion.
I would also second that. In Swanton, my kids are on the same bus as high schoolers, and we were at a point where we didn't have the option to drive him. And yeah, it is not ideal. We now, at least I try very hard to drive them every day because that experience, like the things that I've heard, it's not a good situation. I know other families who have rearranged their work schedules to drive students because they're like, I am not putting my 5-year-old on the same bus as a 17-year-old. Like, that's not happening. And, you know, as Rennick said, I don't know what, if anything, we can do about that. But I know from experience and speaking with other families, the bus situation is absolutely an issue.
Transportation is always, a big issue, both in terms of behavior and in terms of length of route and all of those pieces. So I think when you do, doing a bus study is something we can always look into, but they're not inexpensive. So that's something we could bring in the future as to what it would look like. But again, those are the kinds of things we look at to see, what are the barriers? Look at the data. What are the barriers that are keeping families from, with little kids, it's usually the families with a child who has anxiety or the family that is struggling to have the routines to get the child to school. And again, usually with older students, it's about engagement, which is really why we call Celine, instead of like a truancy officer, she's a student engagement person, right? So there's also that piece about engaging learning experiences so that students want to come to school. And that is also another piece. It's not just about family dynamics or the student dynamics.
And engagement is big too with the little kids. My child getting out of bed on a testing day looks a lot different than an all-school celebration day, right? So,
Our fifth grader loves to sleep in when he has a test.
I just shared for you some sites that we use about school avoidance and the importance of attendance. There are a lot of resources. We're going to be digging into those and probably have certain ones that are part of our public relations series. Goes out. It's going to be a different video every month. And just, engaged students and families are successful, and that's what we're looking for.
I don't have a question, Jen. There are still some states that do this. I'm not aware that Vermont does it anymore. A long time ago, maybe 50 years ago, there was a training programs where you could ask a high school student to go through training to be a bus patrol. and they used to wear a belt or a badge, and they couldn't throw kids off the bus, but they'd be bus monitors. And at the end of the year, they would get recognized, and I'm sure they got some little reward. But it's interesting we're talking about high school kids, because my experience was that when students get to be juniors and seniors, they probably aren't on the bus. But some of the nastiest kids I've had to deal with were middle school kids who like to kind of show off. They were feeling olds against younger kids. But I think we may have an audience there of responsible high school students, that if we can talk with their insurance company and give them some training, you know, if a 16-year-old boy says to a middle school student, you know, I'm reporting you, or you've done it, it might stop them from doing something to a kindergarten kid. So, something you can talk about.
Well, I think any solution should be looked at, because just to kind of put it out there, and I've asked this of Laura, like, transportation in general is costing us so much, just on all facets, and I think it's an ever-increasing expense. But I do think it's affecting, like, truancy in the school a lot, because I'm not alone. I hear from multiple parents about the buses and what happens there, and it's the start of the day. You know, for a lot of kids, they're waking up, they're getting on this bus, and it's setting a tone, right? And it's also affecting our ability to get bus drivers, because they're not equipped to deal with this.
We do train our bus drivers, and we do employ some bus monitors.
You know?
But it's not an easy position to fill.
It's not, and then there's money to get monitors, and so I think this is actually a challenge that could, a bit more thought might have to go into it, because I see it. I just see it constantly, and all grade levels all the way up. And yeah, I mean, some parents can, you know, work around their schedules and take them out and manage that. But I think for a lot of parents who can't, that I don't know how to get around it, but I do think it's an issue.
Part of the challenge that I run up against is there's a population of students when administratively when you're addressing bus behavior. Part of that challenge does go right back to what we were talking about with attendance and truancy, and certainly our obligation is to keep our buses safe and to work as hard as we can on that, for sure. And it's also challenging to know that when I say to a student, you need to take the next 10 days off the bus, and that's an extreme example, right, for a really significant behavior, that I'm not likely to see that student for the next 10 days in many cases. So that's just another piece that plays into the puzzle.
In some cases, we pay for transportation.
That's right.
Which is another alternate transportation. And so it's very complex, and you know, the case law around transportation and student rights is also a complex one. So
also one where
yeah, it's an important discussion.
Chris, how many buses do you have?
13, I believe.
11 or 12, yeah, right around there. I will say very few of our bus write-ups involve high school students with our little kids. And I had the same reservations, and my daughter ended up on the bus, and we had a really good experience with that, and I had reservations with that too. There's very few. Typically on a bus, the littlest kids sit up front right behind the driver, and it's kind of ages back. Some buses are more congested than others, and some routes are longer than others, which all plays a part. And it's really kind of individualized. So there's a lot to look at with the bus. But ideally, as for write-ups that we actually work with and might discipline on or work with Dan on, there's very, very few that actually involve the high school kids with the elementary. It is typically our own age group, teasing our own age group, and small scale stuff, siblings. A lot of siblings on a bus together.
I'm going to go ahead and apologize. I'm pretty sure mine are the...
I didn't mean it. Parents are very clear. Either you want them together on the bus because they take care of each other, or keep them as far apart on the bus as you can.
Yeah. How much control do we have over the busing? Like, I know there's basically one company in the area. Like, how what sort of influence can we have? Is it a conversation that we can have as a board and actually be able to possibly take action or make changes, or is it really essentially out of our hands because it is a contract with the bus company?
We are in control of our contract. I will say that obviously only having a few providers is an issue. But ultimately it's, they work for us and they're providing service for us. So if we wanted to increase routes or look at routes or investigate routes, then that's ridership or bus monitors or cameras or all those things.
Yeah.
That's all things that we could include in our RFP.
We have talked a lot about cameras on buses and thinking about making that investment. That's a thing that we may be doing as well. And we provide training. I watched Yeshua this fall, and Eric Becker did a fabulous job with classes came out one by one. They talked about how to get on the bus, how to behave on the bus, what it looks like, how to let your bus driver know. They did a wonderful job. And buses are places where tired children are going to be getting an opportunity to, interact in ways where they are less well supervised. But again, the data really does show that it is generally same age peers interacting with one another, rather than high school kids. Although if there is something big that happens on a bus, then everyone sees that. But it's addressed. We remove kids from buses for grossly inappropriate behavior.
I think part of tying back to what Rennick had said, that it's the start of the day. It sort of sets the tone for the day. And in my experience, it's not the behavior on the bus, it's the bus. Like, oh my gosh, I'm late, I'm gonna be late, I'm missing this. Because, like my students, my kids don't get, that's also part of why I don't put them on the bus when I don't have to, is they're late. And I know it's been mentioned and it's been brought up. And so sort of setting that tone for the day, like one of my kids in particular is very high anxiety. He's like, I don't want to be late, I don't want to get in trouble, I don't want to fall behind on something. And when he has to take the bus, he's instantly at that level. And so he's starting his day with this heightened anxiety, which is going to impact his behavior. And it's just, exactly, it's that whole snowball.
They're arriving at school too close to the start of the day. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Just so I understand what you're saying.
So, and again, like, there's only so much, and people you gotta deal with what you gotta deal with, like, that's part of life. But for setting the tone, if there are things that we can do, because we do want the most positive start to a day that we can have, beyond just the behaviors on the bus, if that's something that we can have any sort of influence on, I think. Less stressed kids are always a good thing.
And after-school activities can affect the number of kids on the bus. So if it's the last few weeks of school and tutoring's ended and Crossroads has ended, then you have a lot more congestion in the parking lot for student pickup and more on the bus. So sports, all of that stuff, and the timing of them, everything's connected.
Yeah,
Does Swanton recognize good attendance? Again, I know some schools at the end of the year when they have their ceremonies, if you have, and I'm not focused on perfect attendance, you don't want sick kids, but let's say you less 5 days or fewer. Does anybody do that anymore?
We have not, no. And really, COVID tossed that out.
I don't know if it makes a difference. I know some kids used to think it did.
I do think that kind of thing can be motivating for some kids. The concern that I have about something like that is that I dislike recognizing or not recognizing a student for something that isn't within their own control. And sometimes it's students that we know are refusing to come to school or refusing to get out of bed or whatever the case may be, and it's a straightforward choice. But other times it really is a family dynamic kind of issue, and if it's not within a student's control, it doesn't seem fair to withhold something from them.
I just had a comment / question. So I agree with Dawn, because I was thinking back to when I was in high school. And we did have, as Justine said, Swanton has it, I don't know about the other schools, but it was kindergarten, middle schoolers and high schoolers. And we did have a student that was a bus monitor that would walk up and down the aisles, make sure everybody was behaving, and, you know, had a little clipboard and so forth and so on. So those are my only two comments. My other one would be is, since there's so much interest, that I'm gonna add to a future agenda item that we have a conversation about busing. We could add that. Right?
Yeah, I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
If it's worth, like, if it's worth
I think
the,
it's worth
the time.
I think it's
if
worth
we
some
have the
kind of
ability.
conversation
Yeah.
prior to the year starting.
Yeah.
And Lord,
Well, and we are in the first of a three-year contract, but that doesn't mean we couldn't make small adjustments without going back out to bid. And also some of the things that we're talking about take a while to investigate,
Right.
unfortunately. If you're talking about comparing the cost of, you know, putting bus monitors on all the buses or cameras versus are we changing routes? Do we want kids less, you know, on buses for less time or, you know,
I would
that's
like-
gonna take a while to
right.
go investigate.
And
yeah.
starting a conversation on it, I think is what I'm hearing that people would like
And
to.
one of the things, like, this is pretty high visible within the community. It comes up a lot that I hear of. And so even having that discussion and say we're open to ideas and community feedback and ties into, like, you know, some of our board goals, just saying, okay, community too, what do you think? So we may not be able to control so much, but even if we're sure we're trying. And I have one funny joke before we move on. My son went on a 4-year-old went on a field trip. So it was like his first time he got to go on a bus. And I asked him when he came home, like, how did it go? And he goes, Dad, it was great, but they had no safety belt.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why. And then I was like, and I looked at him and I was like, I don't know why. I still don't. So.
If you go over a bus with 80 kids, 48 kids on it, and they all had a seatbelt, you know, some schools have tried that.
Barry has them. My nephews have them. And assigned seats.
Some of
They have
them make it
assigned
work,
seats
yeah.
and
Which is
seatbelts.
quite a-
I think they should.
Yeah, I was just saying, I'm like, I don't know why you don't have a safety belt. I really don't. You can't answer me.
You're fine on the bus.
And what you do is you tie it into the ignition, and if it's under any seatbelt, it's apart, bus won't go.
There you go.
So
You could request
some kids have been known to be on there for 3 days.
Okay, so yeah, we'll definitely look at that out and have a further conversation with Laura, so it's gonna take a lot of time, but starting a conversation on the future agenda, I think is definitely worthwhile.
And I'd just like to say, like, I know we had a lot of feedback. It's a hard job, and I want to acknowledge, like, all the bus company, the bus drivers, everybody who does it. I know that they're doing the best they can, and I don't want it to come across as, like, you know, slapping their wrists or whatever it is. I acknowledge it. It's a hard job, and they do the best they can, and we're lucky. That we do have people stepping up and being the drivers because our kids need it. So just a general thank you for everything.
So moving on to resolutions. Laura, do you have your resolution redone and ready to present?
Dawn came in and worked on some edits. I did share it in the drive.
Yep.
It was really just the omission of the bottom sections, the second whereas, and then everything after number 1 was eliminated. I think the general feeling was that there was no reason to give them suggestions of possible solutions, so.
I think we said the first part, we didn't change anything, we just said, good to go. But we did talk about it, about with Laura, and I could be wrong, but I kind of said, let's not solve the problem for them. We may have better ideas than they do, but it's their responsibility. So I liked what I saw, and I thought we should move it forward so we can get it in, but other people certainly have a right to comment or critique.
I'll make a motion to accept the proposals.
What was the title of that resolution? It was resolution on,
To eliminate the requirement of federal grant assessments for Vermont schools.
right, yeah, okay.
I'll second that.
Peter, and then Megan. So yeah, we can do it with them this one. So, alright. All those in favor of adopting Laura's resolution to hand in, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Toby
Make sure
had
the
a
minutes do
resolution.
not say that it's my resolution. Sorry.
You get that,
Laura resolution?
Sorry, strike Laura resolution, the resolution that Laura presented.
Thank you.
I did hear from Toby, and he will table his resolution till next year.
Going to table it? Okay. I wondered because he and I bounced back and forth, and the last I knew, we didn't connect after the last conversation. We were close. Okay. All right.
Because he wasn't here tonight, and I just don't think he had it prepared, so he said he'll table it till next year.
So our next step would be to submit it through the online system that the MVSD has.
Jen, probably, and Julie will know this, but when they hear the date that the resolutions are going to be acted on, we probably should chat a little bit to see who they're going to contact if they have a question. Many times the questions don't come that day, but they come back to the superintendent's office, he calls the board chair, or whoever he or she wants to bring together. So I think you'll probably hear from them.
Yeah, okay.
Very, very red. June 15th, that has to be submitted by. All right. Committee updates and recommendations. Facility committee has several
Yes.
for action.
It's gonna be a busy summer.
I see that.
Already a busy summer.
All right, so yeah, the first, so there's several things that required action from our last meeting. First one is the lighting contract amendment. So EEI, John Brown, let us know that they would like to amend the contract, and the amendment is in our folder. Basically, all the language in section 9.4 shall be replaced with all wages paid to laborers by ESCO and or subcontractors with respect to the project will conform with state and federal minimum wage requirements. So John informed us that I wasn't completely familiar with the Davis-Bacon language, but apparently it is quite cumbersome and probably not needed in this situation, causing a lot of extra paperwork for all parties involved. And John assured us that it will have no effect to this project, especially at least negatively. It won't have any effect to this project. We'll still get the same lighting and everything that we were planning on having. So it's just a language change, and our committee did recommend that we approve the contract amendment.
I'll move that, and I just note, Peter, that it's wage too, it's wage scale. And as long as we meet the state and federal, we're all right. I won't get into the other details, but, so I move action on that.
Second.
Don's first, Rex second. Any discussion, comments? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Right, that brings us to the Highgate classroom, outdoor classroom project. So this one had been delayed a little bit. We did get a RFP out to the messenger to solicit vendors. So we did get one submission from MSB Builders for, no, we got two actually, MSB Builders and then Reynolds Custom Creation. So MSB Builders was $63,500 and Reynolds Custom Creation submitted a bid for $60,000 even. So again, the committee looked at that, saw no reason not to take the lowest bid, so we are recommending Custom Creations accepting their bid for $60,000. Jason did state as part of the upgrades on this project that the concrete needed to be ADA compatible. So it sounded like the original scope, there wasn't going to be any rebar or anything in the concrete. It was probably going to be like sidewalks, and we're putting a building on it. It has to be able to support it. We didn't want it moving and stuff, so that obviously adds a little bit of cost to it, but obviously well worth it. So I don't know if I'm missing anything else here, but again, we recommend taking Custom Creations bid at $60,000.
Well, which project did we have bids where there was a big discrepancy? Wasn't this?
That's the fire alarm.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Okay, all right. I'll move that one. Once more, I'll make a motion to approve that.
Thank you, Don. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Right, second, any discussion?
I have a quick question. You said, so Jason said that the concrete has to be a certain level. Is that already accounted for in this amount? Yes, okay.
And it's really ADA compliant, so it's handicap accessible. There has to be a ramp and things like that, different exits, and that was not included in the original bid when we were originally collecting estimates. Yeah.
Okay.
It is definitely in these numbers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I was gonna ask the same thing. I was like, clarification. So, all right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Okay, the next one is the Swanton Door System project. So again, that one went out, this is for Swanton, and this went out for RFP, went into the messenger. Received one quote from Omega Electric for how do you say that? Can you say that one?
Avigilon.
Say it again?
Avigilon.
Avigilon, thank you. System upgrades, and that came in at $32,330, and we had budgeted $40,000 for that project. So again, we recommended that we accept the bid.
We have a motion to accept the bid to go to Omega.
I'll make the motion to accept the bid.
Brian will make the motion. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Ron will second it. Any discussion? I do have a quick question. I remember prior meeting, we had discussed that they were gonna, all the door systems were gonna be the same throughout all the schools, so this is gonna match the other schools?
That's, well, yes.
Or as much as it
What
possibly
you're
can.
talking about is actually the camera system. They were very much integrated, life safety
right.
systems, yeah.
Okay, so.
Yeah, we're on that course, we're on that
Perfect,
course.
so we won't be spending additional money down the road
No.
to adjust, okay.
Jason's all about that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Jason is doing, and certainly as a committee, I think we're very pleased with this work and working with Laura on the financial part. We're trying to get the same system in all the schools, so that when people don't have one door security system, other school has part of the fire alarm system. It's going to take a while to get there, but we have a plan, and I think that tonight's action is going to move it in a really positive direction.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And that brings us to our last action item, which is the Swanton fire alarm system that Dawn mentioned. So did place an RFP again for the St. Albans Messenger, received 2 quotes. One quote from Summit Fire and Security in the amount of $128,000, and one from Johnson Controls for $219,944. We are recommending the Summit Fire and Security System for $128,000. One of the reasons that Johnson Controls was so much more is because they were going to be contracting out a lot of the work, so I think that was one of the reasons why it was going to be a higher cost.
Also, we think, did Jason say that this vendor that had the low bid works in our schools?
Yes. Yes.
Services our schools, so.
That's a good point. Jason did.
They have an
very
advantage,
comfortable.
which is a good advantage. They know our systems.
Yeah.
So.
Very good. He did reach out to one other vendor also, but it was a smaller company and just don't have capacity to do it.
That's what we did too. So again, yes, we're recommending Summit Fire and Security.
And I'll make the motion to go to James for Summit Fire.
Thank you, Rennick.
Unless somebody else wants, facilities committee kind of gets organized and does not work. If anybody else wants to second it or veto it or whatever, we'll be on the committee next month. I'll second that, John.
Thank you, Don. Right. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
And I'll just do a quick update. I won't bore everybody. The minutes are here. It was a busy meeting, and I would recommend that you do go through the minutes. There's a lot of interesting stuff in here, but I'll just highlight a couple of things. Highgate Facility Director. If you remember, we had to replace the person that had left, and we have gotten Jason Butler to take on that position, which we're very happy about. So that we're organizing it now, so Jason will be the facility director, and we're trying to get, and I think we do in a couple of instances, facility supervisors for each school that will be reporting to Jason. So
Except for Franklin, just to make
except
sure
for
that-
Franklin, correct?
Stephen as well.
Yeah.
They work very closely.
Yes, they do. But as Don was saying earlier about having systems match and work together, by having Jason oversee all these things and working with Steve and Franklin, I think it's going to make it much easier to bring all these things together. So as a committee, I think we're excited about the direction we're heading there. The Franklin project, that is on track and going. Supposed to start on June 19th. A letter went out the other day giving a timeline and letting people know that the playground will be closed this summer during construction. The only feedback I did get on that was people would like to see the design. They'd like to be able to go to the website or whatever, see what it's going to look like.
I think it's on the MVSD website.
Yeah, it
I
is.
went there and I tried to find it and I found something, but you got to dig. So
Okay, well, let's make it more public.
Yeah.
And more visible, because we
Yeah.
did create a facility page so that we could really be sharing a lot of these.
Isn't there a web design, isn't the page getting redone though too?
I can't really hear you.
Isn't the web page getting actually redone anyways?
Yes, sorry, there's
Yeah,
a
I read
fan
that.
over my head.
I also mumbled, so.
I'm not gonna, we are looking at that web design. I'm having a meeting next week on it, the week after next. But we are doing that. But one of the things I do want to make sure is that we have this page for our facilities so that the community can really see where we are with various projects. Because we will always have various projects.
You also had pictures of work.
He did, I did see on Facebook where he,
the guy with no hair.
on my quick scroll through Facebook, I saw that they did put the design on there for people to see when the project was upcoming. So I saw that little blurb on there.
I think the full design, I just checked, I think it was there and it probably was set to expire. And I'll have him set that later, so those things stay up longer.
Okay.
Yeah, or don't go away at all until it's done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, so that obviously starts this summer and will go throughout the year, and it was helpful to see that timeline on there and know that it will be completed by the fall of September of 2024. MVU roof project phase 2 is on track, and that is ready to start as soon as school's out. That's a summer project. The Highgate heating that we approved, that project is also on track, along with the Highgate kitchen hood. We talked about some of these other things. MVU sign, that is ready to go. They are going to wait until after graduation before that gets put in, but that is ready to go. MVU ventilators, you can read that. Talk about the outdoor classrooms.
In regards to the ventilators, Peter, do you mind if I just jump in?
Sure, go
Just
ahead.
to kind of lay the groundwork. The price on those are coming in a lot higher than what we originally thought. They've gone up about $6,000 a unit since last year. So we will either have to reduce the number that we buy or find an alternative funding source to offset that. But we're investing in that.
We'll be doing that for the next 5 years.
Yeah, there's over 100 of them.
Yeah. I'd encourage you to look at the MVU weight room grant. That's a very exciting project, and I noticed it was written in 3 or 4 different reports on our drive. So, but basically, MVU is going to get a new weight room, and what is it's a $100,000 project, or
Yep.
so that's really exciting, great thing for our school. We talked a lot about the Highgate white building, I should say. We talked about this before. I'm not going to go into the issues. You can certainly read through it, but that is something that we're going to have to deal with as a board. We talked about going to the community, especially the town of Highgate, to see where they're feeling. As a committee, we have really felt like we don't want to pour a lot of money into that building because it's not, we're not going to get out of it what we put into it. So we just need to make sure the board's aware that that's out there, and we are going to have to deal with it. Parking lot, Franklin, Swanton, MVU parking lots are all in rough shape. We've been patching them, trying to keep them up, but I think we're going to have to start looking at budgeting at least some small projects, doing a little bit at a time if that's all we can afford. But we've got to start getting these back up to standards. Obviously, Franklin with a project going on with heavy equipment, we don't want to do anything with that in the near future until that's done. But overall, we need to look at that. A lot of discussion about the MVU athletic fields and what conditions they're in and what we can do to improve them. So, in a nutshell, that was kind of our meeting the other night. And, a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to have a busy facilities group this summer.
Peter. Any questions for the facilities?
Well, Jason's, him taking on the other position, will that impact like how, I guess, is it just an expansion of his duties, or is he now, I guess I'm trying to understand the position better, because he's like the Swanton.
He started as just Swanton.
Right.
We expanded that to MVU last year after an extensive search. We put some other positions in place. The finding someone who can not only supervise the staff, but do the long-term planning, it's a higher level job. It's not just a supervisor of the building. And so he then has been doing that work at MVU as well. And after we had a search for the Highgate position, and we had talked about this, many school districts have one facility director, and some of them have one facility director for too many buildings. But we did talk about this, possibly we'll talk about, Steve's title as well. They complement each other with their skill set. But we have used savings of other positions to then backfill with supervisors in the buildings. Jason meets with principals on a regular basis. He's in all 3 buildings. He had already stepped in because you've heard all the projects that were happening in Highgate. He was already mentoring that individual over there. So it made sense, and we made adjustments to the whole team, really, or department, to make that happen and be successful. And we have promised principals that we will revisit that to make sure that it's continually. But already, Yeshua said, "Thank you. I had no idea what I didn't have until I had this happening in my building."
So it's like Jason, and then everything is falling under him. He's setting the.
Steve and Franklin, you know.
And it's Julie said they have like building supervisors, but they may not. They do not need the same skill level that you do. And I think I said at the facilities committee meeting, probably in the discussions that we'd had, either Toby and I, that would happen maybe in a couple of years in our planning. But when we had a vacancy that we couldn't fill, or not do it now.
Right. We had it was in our long-term plan. I was looking at our long-term plan that we did as an admin team when we merged, and it was on the list. And I was actually pretty impressed with all the stuff we've done now. But that's one where we really have consolidated as natural opportunities arose. You know, you're able to do it if you have the right people. Why not?
So congratulations, Carla.
Absolutely.
Okay, then I would like to just take a moment and say thank you. I had the pleasure of working with Jason when I was just on the Swanton board with our playground, and it was a fantastic experience. He's done amazing work, and I've never heard anything bad about him. And I just want to, I think I can speak for everybody to say congratulations, and it's going to be great.
One thing that hasn't been said about all of this is something that's kind of been in the back of my mind. You have somebody as good as Jason, and if you don't keep molding within, then they go somewhere else.
Yeah, right.
And it would not be pleasant to someday say, a school down the street 10 miles just hired to take their complex, and they all go, what are you thinking? So I think it's important that we acknowledge that.
So yeah, Jason, like you said, it's a big position.
Yeah.
He's got a lot to handle, but he's very well organized. He's good at managing people, and he's very good at working with Laura and with projects and the financing. But with all that said, he's doing that right. He's going to be tough to replace. We've created this position now. And we've got someone very good in it. You know, I don't want to look down the road, but yeah, and maybe we'd have to do something different. Yeah.
One thing, he's leaving a legacy though behind him, like the systems and the documented maintenance cycles and schedules and long-term planning that he does is something that he started in Swanton. He's took it to MBU, did that there. So heaven forbid, I don't want him to leave, but he would pass that down at least, where we'd be in a much better position than we would have, because he's very good at that side of things.
We'll have systems.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yes, systems,
facility
documentation.
Yeah.
That's what we need. That's great.
Well, thank you, facilities team, for your update and all your hard work. Finance committee, we got warrants first.
Check warrants first. So, the warrants for the month of May. Accounts payable $1,134,625.43. Payroll checks $41,705.41. Payroll other distributions $1,661,183.96. Payroll deductions $620,408.48. Grand total $3,457,923.28.
Anybody like to make the motion to accept the check warrants as read?
I'll make that motion.
Joanne, thank you. Second.
second.
Thank you, Devin. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Financial reports.
It's included in your drive. I don't really have a lot to say, other than this is probably the last financial report you'll receive, obviously, before the end of the school year. I think we came in, we're in a comfortable position. Projected carryover is of just slightly over $1 million right now. Revenues came in about $200,000. The variance was only $200,000 from what was budgeted, not to say there wasn't some adjustments to be made throughout the different local, state, and federal revenues that we received, but overall, we came in where we wanted to. We are in the process right now of continuing to clean up purchase orders, year-end spending, all of those things. The last of the MOUs and any supplemental pays are being issued. Processing summer wages, but ultimately I think we're right in the range where we're going to end in June 30. So.
How does that compare with recent years? No, don't go too far back.
Yeah, it's comfortable compared to other years, so it's a good place to be as far as offsetting taxes 2 years from now. It will be fairly consistent. Yeah.
Is there anything that we should have on the next meeting agenda that we promised somebody we might do if we were looking hopefully on finance? I think we addressed that in our facilities meeting with the things that were.
The Franklin insulation project, the second phase of that was a small
so we
thing.
did that, but I didn't know if there was any school-based projects or.
The only thing that recently came up, and I haven't had a chance to share this with anyone yet, I'm going to be talking to Dan about it tomorrow, but it's very small, a sand blaster for the ag program that just died, and that could be anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000 or $11,000. That unbudgeted, if we can pull that off in this year, I'd like to do that, so it doesn't hit us next year, and then also shipping time and all of that.
Sure.
But that's the only thing I can think of.
So you come back next meeting, you or Dan?
Honestly, it's not an amount that I really would necessarily, we would manage that within the budget.
So it's small enough that you feel comfortable with it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Laura. Do I have a motion to accept the financial report?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Devin.
Second.
Thank you, Megan. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And then we have fiscal year 22 audit acceptance.
I'll talk about the audit. The link there in the agenda was to the full audit document, so if you're looking for some light reading, 122 pages of financial statements.
The finance committee reads it, right?
We did, so
quiz and all that.
we've gone through it, and the important thing for the whole board to read is the letter that was put in the drive dated March 29th. And really in there, to hit just the highlights, you can kind of skim to the last sentence of each paragraph, where they kind of give conclusions on each topic. And this is a really clean management letter, so I think definitely need to give commendation to Laura's team, to Laura for a successful audit. Reading through that letter, it was all positive in there, no major findings, no material changes or adjustments recommended, so a job very well done. So I'd make a motion to accept the FY22 audit.
Thank you, Devin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joanne. Any discussion?
I have a question after we vote it. It's not a discussion. Just,
Do you want to ask it now? Or?
well, it's to Laura. Where are we in the cycle of I know there aren't many firms that do this anymore, but I know we used to have a plan that every so many years we put it out to bid, and many times got a different auditor after 3 or 4 or 5 years. Where are we in that cycle?
We definitely have been with, I think, 4 years now, maybe 5, with RHR. We've been operating under the allowable contract renewal growth rate. And actually, it's been the same price for 3 years now. Honestly, there's, I think, only one other auditing firm right now that would even compete with them.
As long as we're comfortable with.
Yeah, our auditor, our person is what I call her.
The person who comes
is different and rotated, so we're not having that always the same
Same
contract.
firm, but different.
Same firm, and also, they would share their workflow with you, but they have implemented many checks and balances within their organization, so they have, a quality control department now, completely separate from the independent person that comes to us, and they have different steps to confirm that many people are reviewing our information.
So they are quality.
Yeah, they are.
You know, 35, 40 years ago, you'd get 5 or 6 firms that wanted to bid and do everything, offer you anything and everything to get the contract. Now there's nobody. It's almost like school buses.
Yeah.
One
I'm happy to go out to bid if the board would like us to.
I wasn't asking for that reason, I just
Yeah.
want to make sure, 'cause I knew at one time there was kind of a tendency to move it around.
So there's no mandate or anything, it's just us deciding whether, like, we're not required to change after a certain amount of years.
I think Paul made a good point, they're a big enough firm. I mean, we used to use Angelino, and they got like 3 people. Twice had 2 or 3, and with that helped.
He's now has half the state, it used to be state people work in finance department working for him. Many business managers now work for him. He's eating everybody up. Yeah.
That would be.
No, I never worked for him.
She's like, he's eating everybody up, not you.
No. He is,
She's got a contract rate. All right, perfect. All those in favor of accepting this, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, moving on to Student Success Committee update.
I don't think we really have an update. We had an organizational meeting and we have a meeting tomorrow. We didn't want to leave anyone out.
Okay.
Megan, are you chair of that committee?
I am.
We'll be looking forward to your next update.
Yeah. I promise it'll be better than we don't have one.
You know, if I was on this board, I would think the facility committee should be dissolved, because they come to every meeting with this laundry list. But it'll get, we won't keep doing that.
All right, thank you.
With the
And
projects every year.
That's right.
next we have a board retreat planning group.
I didn't want to call it a committee.
Well, would it have board retreat planning group update?
Yes. We didn't use the word update.
You know, yeah, I was gonna say there's no updates, so
Okay.
we're good.
Or
We're moving on.
Or conversation with, not funny. Joanne and Peter have, I'll say a little something, Joanne and Peter have been working very hard on putting together this retreat. I'm very thankful for that, heading that up, taking some burden off.
Yeah. So I don't, just maybe a quick recap, because I'm not sure how the responses have gone back to Julie. So we're looking at July 12th at the Abbey.
Yes.
Is that good for everybody? We'll
Oh, I
start
did,
with-
what time? I didn't see that.
We
Haven't picked
Well,
it yet.
Okay.
That was the in question, so, I mean, we had done it before in the past at the Abbey, starting at 5, because we have to have a small board meeting first. And then after the board meeting, we would go into the retreat, which was at 5:30.
Somebody said 6 on some agenda.
Last several years, it's been 5:30, just because we were trying
Doesn't
to,
make any difference for them.
yeah, trying to get it, because usually we just approve the warrants. And we have new mandated policies that the Vermont School Board Association shared out with everyone. So I'll make sure that we have everything ready so we can get those approved at that meeting. We'll probably do a first morning next. But it's usually a 15-minute, we joked at the last retreat that it was like done in 12 minutes. And maybe we should be that efficient all the time. It didn't. We do. Not 12 minutes.
So what,
yeah.
I guess, would be the consensus, if people started at 5 or started at 5:30? And that would mean starting the school board meeting itself at 5 or 5:30. what works best, so I think.
It's a Wednesday.
Yeah, it's a Wednesday night.
5:30, I work till 5.
Okay.
Devin?
I can be flexible, so I'll defer to Megan, so.
No, I mean,
No, if we have people that can't make it. then
I can
we gotta-
probably get out, like if everybody else says 5 is much more, you know.
The only reason I say
Words,
5 is I
words.
think we're better at 5 than we are at 9.
So that would be the other, is what time would we like to end the meeting? Because we're, you know, so we're gonna have our regular board meeting and even, you know, 15, 20 minutes, it's still a bit relaxed. And then, you know, the eating or the ordering. So all of these things eat up time and, you know, quickly, you know, it doesn't take much that we're looking at, you know, 2 or less hours for the actual retreat part of it.
So the board meeting is somewhat like we had last year. Devin came forward. It's gonna handle that little 15-minute
Yes.
essential things. So all they need is a quorum for that, right? I
Yes.
mean, that's what we were operating last year. If we get 5 people there, we didn't worry that people couldn't make it because everything was pretty much, have to do it.
Right. It really will be, you know, approve the mandated policies and the warrants, barring an emergency. That's what would be on the agenda.
So Dawn, are you suggesting 5, and if
I
people
just want to
can't
be
make it till
respectful of other people's
5:30?
schedule. I want to be respectful of others, but I only mentioned that last statement because if someone's sitting here saying, heck, I can't make 5, and I'd ask, I mean, some people here do work.
Well, I'm fine if you do it at 5. I can't make it because I've got one of those dentist appointments and I'm trying to reset one of those.
If that's the case, then we're going to meet at 5. Get Novocaine. They don't do that anymore.
I'm 5 is fine, but, and if need be, like if we don't have the quorum, I can adjust my schedule so that I can be there for.
We always got 5 people short before them.
Yeah, so that's fine.
And how late do we want to go? 2 or 4?
Till we're done.
Wow.
It all depends on how long the agenda Joanne and Peter.
Right. So, okay, do we want to set a not to go past time?
What time does it close?
When you leave.
Well, the Abby and
2 a.m.
I can see it for mine. It could be 8 o'clock.
I can see it now.
I just want to keep
MVSD
in
school
mind,
board closes down the avenue.
brains get mushy after a while.
Yes.
No.
And-
Wow.
Especially
Yeah,
on a
so
work
let's
day.
be mindful of mushy brains and people's work schedules the next day. So I would say like,
So, yeah, if you're starting at 6, you're probably not going to want to go past 9. That's 3 hours.
so.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, we could do the agenda, we could do a timeline to make it look like we're ending at 8:30, but hard stop is 9 o'clock. Is that fair?
What happens at 9 o'clock?
You go to the bar and you get a drink. Coffee.
To keep you awake.
An Irish
Yeah.
That's good.
That's exciting. Joanne, do you want, I added that, what you wanted to the board self-assessment.
Yeah,
You
so I'll just, I sent, well, I'm sorry, Julie didn't send it to you, but I sent everyone an email, just it's not really a reminder, but it shows the board goals that we've had, and that we set a couple of years ago. Just with a quick statement to review them, comment on them, and if you're interested in either, you know, adding a goal, like submit it, and then that way Peter and I can take all the emails or the responses. If you want to call either one of us, I don't speak for Peter, I'm sorry, if you'd like to call me and just discuss it, you can call me.
Peter, you aren't going to get anybody called.
And just so that we have something to work with. Peter and I will meet again, I believe in 2 weeks, before our next meeting, and we'll go over whatever information's been submitted to us, so that way we can keep things moving. And
So our next meeting's 2 weeks from today?
correct, our next
The
So if we
20th.
could have them back a week from today, give
Correct.
us time to review.
Yes.
You said the 14th, right?
Yep, yes, next Wednesday is what I asked for.
Yeah, okay,
In the
that's,
email.
that's good.
And then I will let Julie take over the second part, because there is a small survey. I didn't even add up all the questions, but maybe 10 statements.
It's a lot smaller than the last one.
Right.
It is so much small, yeah, for the board members that did that 2 years ago, that's.
Jen and Rennick and I attended the Vermont School Board and Superintendent training, and they went through a rubric of the new governance standards that are going into the education quality standards. And after Joanne and I had gone back and forth on some other things that the school boards gave us, and this just looked so good, and it's, it's going to be the standard, so why not start looking at, ourselves, and actually at the table, and sometimes we're on camera, but listening to other school boards, we kind of left there saying, well, you're doing pretty good. So I think it's a good tool that if it's going into the state regulation, we may as well then just be using that as, instead of a shifting benchmark. And Joanne and Peter asked if I would add like in other comments, any other things you want to share about how the board works together, and I added that. So when you tell me when you want me to send it out, I'll send it out. It will go to
Tomorrow.
I will be happy to do that.
After your first cup of coffee.
I can do it before I leave. It takes 2 minutes.
It's just, I'd like it this evening.
I've got it up right now. Challenge accepted.
And just real quick, for the retreat, is it just the board, or are we inviting any admin in?
I think we should just do board.
And Julie.
Of course, Julie. She gets invited to
Yes. I accidentally, when I changed the date in the calendar, invited every administrator, and they all panicked. They all had thoughts about me. And then somebody called my attention to it. I said, the board retreat is for the board and for the superintendent. And they were very grateful. But it was.
Their day will come.
Right. I think it would be helpful to have a retreat with the principals at some point.
It'd be great during the school year. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
I was just wondering too, because of Laura, because so many things come back to like money. So.
I avoided eye contact when you asked the question.
Saying, what is this gonna cost? It's right there.
The whole year figured out. Happy to do whatever.
Excellent. Sounds great. And again, thank you guys so much. Truly appreciate it.
But as far as the comments, you said additional comments to, like, when you score something, at least it would help Joanne and I, if there's a particular reason you scored it that way, to maybe just a quick note, so to give us an idea of things that we can discuss.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda is a retirement notice.
So the board does not need to take motion when a teacher retires, but I wanted to let you know we have a long-standing, I won't say how many years, I know Don, you like to talk to the teachers about how long they've been there, but I think that makes them reflect on their age, and I don't know that I want to do that to this person, but actually I was very saddened. I met with her, she asked to meet with me personally. But Mary Hartman is retiring from being a business teacher at MVU, and she has been there since she got out of college. And it is a very difficult decision for her, and we are very sad to make that announcement, that she won't be returning next year.
Doesn't Chris, don't you have someone retiring after 30+ years?
Ms. Rose?
We have 3 people retiring this year. Yep, Cindy Rose definitely has spent here 36 years.
She was one of my favorite people over the years.
She's lovely.
Anyway, that was a new retirement decision, so we wanted to make sure that we
we don't need to do anything.
I'm sure she'll be missed.
Very much.
Julie, question? We had a notice today from Wendy that she couldn't make it,
Tonight, yes.
but I didn't see, Kasha was on, but I didn't see her for special ed that time.
Miss Tina is there.
She did?
Yep.
Right, future agenda items.
Sorry, we didn't do the new teachers.
Oh,
That's right. Next is our new teacher hires.
sorry.
Number 11.
What was before the retreat?
Oh, I wrote over it, I'm sorry. I made my little notes all over that, sorry about that. Next agenda.
There we go.
Why am I here?
I waited all night for that.
We just have two.
What were we saying about melty brain?
We know.
Right.
It's after 8, so we have to watch that 9 o'clock time. We have two hires. We are going to be hiring Mary Stallings or Stallings? Stallings, who's coming to us from Kentucky to teach 5th grade? 6th grade.
Sixth grade
that's
STEM.
right. Science, technology, engineering, and math. She is very excited and very skilled in that content area. She was going to engineering school when she got the calling to be a teacher. And we are also looking forward to having Shelby Lang, who will likely be in 5th grade, as a new teacher for us as well. So both excited to have them. Again, I can't say enough about how much I love my conversations with our new incoming teachers.
These are both Swanton?
Yes, absolutely.
Would anybody like to make the motion to accept the 2 new teacher hires for Swanton Elementary School?
I'll make that.
Thank you, Megan. Second?
Awesome.
Don? Any discussion?
That's right. Chris, you're doing great.
I was just going to say, if I can just say something really quickly, that all of the pending hirings that I included in my report, these things move along really fast. And so in the couple of days since I wrote the report and you got it, all of those pendings have been formalized. So that's also really positive. We're really moving along well.
That's fantastic.
Peter has a question.
Forgot the name already, but the teacher from Kentucky,
Yeah.
how did she find out about an opening in Swanton?
The School Spring is nationwide, international, actually. And she talked about New England. She talked about wanting to, she was very, I always ask why Swanton, why Highgate, why MVU? And sometimes their answer is generic, and I forgive them because they're 22 and they're out of college. But she had a really great answer that was very specific to the size of the school, to the type of community, to the community. She spoke a lot about wanting to be part of a community and a school community, and she knows exactly where she's going to live in Franklin County. It's all arranged. It's, you know, I don't slip in always like, so where are you moving to? Somehow it naturally gets in there. Because I know if folks settle in Franklin County, they're more likely to stay for a longer period of time. I'm excited about both, but yes, she had a really great answer about why Swanton.
Can I also interject that in my conversation with her, and I gave a salary offer, which she's a BA, step 1, but the starting salary for teachers in Kentucky is $23,000.
Holy.
So is she going to tell her friends?
Yeah, that's right. That's what she said. She said, I told my friends, why are you staying here? So.
She's probably if not one of the most thorough candidates I've ever worked with in a hiring process, in that after I called her and said that we wanted to move her forward to Julie and Bonnie, she said that would be fantastic. Could she schedule an hour to interview me in a couple of days before she agreed to move forward? She wanted an additional our opportunity to have a conversation with you before she made that decision. So that to me just indicates somebody that's being really thoughtful about the match.
Chris, I don't know if you remember when you were interviewed, but I think we said any vacancies you have at the opening day, you have to come all over.
Even if I remembered that, Don, I wouldn't admit it.
So get it down to at least 2.
That's right.
Well, we're very close.
We are.
We are very close. Yeah. We're to the point where we can manage. It's not where we want to be, but we can manage. So that the scary number shrunk, which we knew it would. Patience and high standards.
Great. All those in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Just a quick little side note, my brother lives in Kentucky and wages are very bad.
God, they can afford a house though.
Because their house prices are extremely, they're a lot lower here, like,
The whole cost of it.
it's very minimal.
Yeah.
My brother's apartment's $400 and it's like a 3-bedroom, huge, I know, right?
That's why they stay there.
I'm like, I don't want to talk
That's why
to
they
you
do
anymore.
We have new safety.
No, they don't. All right, future agenda items, one of them will be, and to add is end of year data and district school discussions. Much can't talk. Future board meeting will be June 20th at the Swanton Elementary School Library at 6 p.m. And June 7th will be a student success committee in the superintendent's conference room at 6 p.m. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting, pardon me?
You have to, someone
Peter
So
Can I have a motion? Peter, second. Rennick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 7-0.